the majority.
Oh my God, that guy's so stupid. He's like a benign version of the manosphere, which is somehow worse.
How you doing?
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
I guess
All right,
since
is
you
this
said
the guy
morality
that
and purpose
destroys
cannot
him?
be found in science, it would just depend on like what you're referencing. If you're saying a description of your psychological preferences would be considered within science, sure. But I don't think that you have to say that it comes from science in order to be like an atheist. As an agnostic atheist, I don't know if God exists and I don't believe that a God exists. And the only ones that I would really reject would be like the all-knowing, all-powerful, all-good, perfect notion of God that plenty of Christians like prescribe themselves. So I guess
How is that relevant to this claim?
you're basing a position of morality and purpose in some like notion of God that isn't the same type of notion of God that typical Christians would prescribe. Your notion of God is
What typical Christians?
yeah, typically when I talk to Christians, they say that they believe in an all-knowing.
How about Cardinal Newman, who defined God as conscience? He was a major influence on all of Catholic social theory. How about that Christian?
Sure. So do you believe in the all-knowing, all-powerful, all-good notion of God?
What do you mean by believe?
Do you think it to be true?
That's the circular definition. What do you mean
How
when
is
you
that
say you
circular?
believe?
How is that circular?
Because you added no content to the answer by substituting the word true and believe.
I said you think it to be true.
All right. So if
What's
you
a belief?
believe something, you stake your life on it.
What do you mean by that?
You live for it and you die for it. That's what I mean by that. It isn't something that you say. It isn't something that's associated with logical consistency. It's not declarative. It's not propositional. It's not a figment of your imagination. It's the presupposition of your attention and your action. And you're either fragmented, in which case you worship multiple gods, or there's some unity at the bottom of it that makes you an unstoppable force.
So Jordan is now, he was a post-mill there for a moment, but now he sounds a lot like a Protestant fundamentalist. You know, this is my belief. There's no logic to it. It's not a proposition. This is it, and I'll die for it. You can hang me. I'll shoot your ass if you disagree with me. Like it's that he's now kind of delving into this other realm of belief. I think because he sort of dislikes this fast talking Zoomer, but
Okay, so you're saying that you don't believe something if you wouldn't die for it?
Not really, no.
Okay. So then,
How would you define belief? Something you say?
Can I explain? Like, I could believe it is the case that this pen exists, but if someone like threatened my life, right, I would lie in order to be able to save my life, right? Like, I think you would do that too. You wouldn't lie to save your
Don't be
life?
so sure.
You wouldn't lie to save your life?
How much do you know about me? I didn't lie to save my career. I didn't lie to save my clinical practice.
Would you lie to like save your children, your mom, your dad?
I don't think lying would save them.
No, can there
think
ever be a
lying's-
circumstance logically that lying could save someone?
Yeah, and if you're steeped in sin, you're likely to live in circumstances like that.
oh god. Okay, so I don't know if some people probably remember when we read The Republic, and there's an interesting episode early on in The Republic where Socrates basically takes the position of this fast talking Zoomer that there actually are circumstances in which lying is moral. Maybe not most circumstances, but there are. I believe the anecdote that Socrates relays is that there's a man who lends you his knife and to do some task, and then when you bring it back to him, you notice that this man has gone insane. So what might he's clearly crazy. What might he do with this knife? Might he kill others? Might he kill himself? Might he destroy someone's property? Who knows? But you actually shouldn't give him the knife back. And so you should lie to him and say, oh, I never borrowed your knife. What are you talking about? Or, oh, I'm sorry, I lost your knife. I can't give it back to you. Some sort of white lie or noble lie in this case. And that anecdote, which I don't think anyone would really disagree with, sets up the notion that lying is necessary in life. Lying is necessary to be a good ruler. And lying, or at least nobly lying, is in fact good, which is perhaps the most provocative claim in all of Plato's corpus. Now, Peterson has, strapped on the persona of the Protestant fundamentalist. And so he's actually going to say, I wouldn't lie if the Nazis come to my house and demand the Jews hiding in my basement. And the only person who would be in that situation is steeped in sin. So he's just, he's saying things in this sort of harsh, aggressive manner that I doubt he actually believes himself.
Give you an example. If you're like in like Nazi Germany, and it is the case that there's like Jewish people in your attic and you're trying to protect them, would you lie to like the Nazis?
I would have done everything I bloody well could, so I wouldn't be in that situation to begin with. It's a hypothetical, and it's not answerable. Hypotheticals? No, I can't answer a hypothetical like that.
Of course you can answer a hypothetical. We're not in a court of law.
Look, don't play games.
I'm not playing games. I'm just asking if you hated it.
If you present me with an intractable moral choice that's stripped of context and you back me into a corner, you're playing game. I just told you, I would do everything.
It's not a hypothetical game. These situations
exist. I'm never
exist.
In that situation.
Like they exist in just the quotidian, mundane lives that we all live. If your 14-year-old daughter asks you, hey, daddy, did you ever like drop acid or smoke cigarettes or get wasted and then drive a car? Many people have done some of those things. Now, what is your response to a 14-year-old girl? Is it to say, yeah, I dropped acid and drove home one time. It was wild. I somehow survived the trip. Is that actually the most moral thing to do? Or is a more moral thing to do to lie and say, I never did that. No one should ever drink and drive. It's fine to have a glass of wine here and there, but getting drunk all the time, that leads to bad things. Isn't that the much more moral thing to do than to just refuse to lie and lay bare all your moral failings in a way that might poorly instruct a young person? I mean, why can't you say that? Why is Jordan afraid to say that? Because he's putting on this persona of like the hard-edged, like, I know it's true, and gosh darn it, you can't convince me otherwise. I won't lie. I would rather die than tell a lie. That kind of thinking is highly unsophisticated. It's just sort of bullshit. It's also bullshit because we don't act that way in our daily lives. Everyone lies. Lying is good. Lying is a demonstration that you are more sophisticated, that you are more moral. But that's a complex argument. Surely Jordan Peterson has been exposed to Plato at some point in his life, or Nietzsche sort of agreed with Plato on this count, at least. Like, why is it that you don't want to say these things? Probably because he wants to continue to have his career talking about being truthful and moral to his conservative Christian audience, and they're not very inclined to, subscribing to the Daily Wire if you're talking in these complex, ambiguous, morally ambiguous, difficult ways.
By the time you've got there, you've made so many mistakes that there's nothing you can do that isn't a sin.
Being born in Nazi Germany and trying to protect people that you care about. Like, there could be a Jewish friend that you have, and you want to protect them.
I think you should just give up on that line of questioning.
Give up on just like trying to clarify your position? Because are you like uncomfortable with me asking this question? It's just a basic hypothetical. Like, I could ask you.
It's just a basic hypothetical where you're
why can't you
Jews'
answer a
lives at stake in Nazi
easy.
Germany. That's just a basic hypothetical.
Obviously, you would lie in that scenario to save their life, but you're like not trying to answer this question for some reason.
I just told you why.
Are you anti-fascist? Like, so you're
Why are
anti-fascist?
you asking that?
I was just asking, just clarifying. But like, okay, again, you're not answering this hypothetical because you know it shows that you clearly would lie to save
I'm
someone's life.
answering it in
Obviously,
a
that's
manner
not
you
what truth
don't
is.
find acceptable.
Obviously, because I care about truth.
I wouldn't be in that scenario.
Obviously, right? Logically,
wouldn't
because
be
that's
in that
already happened.
scenario?
Like, that's in the past. You don't have a time
Like
to
an
travel the
average
device.
German
We're
who
bringing this
lives
logical
during the
hypothetical
Third Reich?
to show you that in some circumstances that do happen within the real world, you would lie to save people's lives. So your definition of truth isn't actually how we're typically using it. So what you're trying to do is you're trying to muddy the waters when I ask you, like, do you believe this? Do you think this to be true? So that you don't actually have to answer the questions. And plenty of Christians don't like that because they clearly see that you don't really like want to be associated with
I can
Christianity with that
imagine
respect.
that I was in a situation where the best I could do as a consequence of my previous mistakes was to tell the least amount of lie I could manage. But that would likely indicate that I had made all sorts of catastrophic errors on my way there.
So you
Right.
would lie to save
That's
someone's life.
just
So again, you do believe it to
wrong.
be true in that circumstance, even though you like lied in that scenario. So
Not
clearly that's
without
not what
the
you see to be true.
context that I put it in.
You were not willing to
I
die for it.
said-
You were not willing to let other people die for it. So that's not what you see to be true then, seemingly.
You're doing exactly what I said you were doing at the beginning of the conversation. You're generating an impossible, restricted, hypothetical with no precursors to back me into a
How is
corner.
it possible? Is there something contradictory about it? Nice to meet you.
Yeah, nice to meet you too. Yeah.
You know, one of the criticisms of Kant, so Kant basically, you know, derived morality from reason. And he derived the golden rule in effect. The basic message of Jesus, in effect, love one another. But he codified it in a little bit different way. It's you should act in a way that your action would be universalized in society. But it's in essence the golden rule. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. So people bring up this hypothetical constantly of what if you are a average German protecting Jews in your basement and an SS officer comes to your house and says, you know, who's in the basement right now? Are there Jews down there? And so you would have to lie. But by lying, would you thus be universalizing everyone lying in society, and thus society would break down and there would be no truth because who can tell what anyone's saying? This is sort of an antinomy within Kantian morality, and I think every reasonable person would just say you would lie. And that, in fact, there are extreme, exceptional points. There are exigents where you lie. And what that exigent is sort of tells you something very important about society. I mean, this reminds me of Carl Schmitt's notion of who is sovereign. Sovereign is the man who is the one who decides on the exception. So that point where any sort of regulation or universality breaks down demonstrates to you something extremely important and foundational about the political order. And this is, in some way, it's analogous, I guess you could say, to what Plato is saying, that there's actually a higher truth, a higher good above lying. Because we are, in our quotidian lives and in major emergencies, willing to lie all the time. And in fact, lying is good. So what does that demonstrate? There actually is a higher good above mere factual accuracy or so-called honesty. And I don't know why Jordan Peterson is avoiding this. And surely at some point in his education, he has been exposed to this. Is he that afraid of losing his job? Because he can talk about how brave he was to like not call a tranny by his or her preferred pronouns. And that's all well and good. But And there is some bravery in that, if we're being honest. But the fact is that, in my mind, rather small gesture of bravery led to his career in the conservative movement and led to him receiving millions of dollars in just payments and exposure and adoration. So he hasn't really sacrificed his career in that refusal to call a tranny by his name or whatever he did. He actually built a career in the conservative movement via that. And he's now terrified of losing that career by getting at the truth, getting at the complexity of the truth, as he might himself say, of accepting the morality of lying, and also just answering questions accurately and flatly. Like, do you believe in God? I don't want to hear someone deconstruct the word believe or do or God. We all know what those words mean. Do you believe in God? That means, do you believe in the God that we find in Genesis? Do you believe in the God that we find in the Gospels? That is God incarnate in Jesus, God who is a savior, God who is redeeming you from your sins, the just wrath of God, of Yahweh, that is, who should kill you for the way that you behave, to send you to hell at the very least, for the way that you behave, for the way that you are, for the way that you inherited Adam's curse. That is God. But he doesn't want to really answer that because he doesn't actually believe in those things. And thus, he wants to play these shell games of what God is. God is the unmoved mover in the Platonic universe. God is your conscience. God is this. God is that. He's just not serious if he's not willing to lay bare these things. Because when we're in that, to go back to the example that I was delving into earlier, if your own daughter or a 14-year-old girl who's a neighbor or something comes up to you and said, have you ever dropped LSD? Have you ever gotten wasted and driven a car? Have you ever cheated on a test in high school? The answer to that is no. Any reasonable moral person would say, no, I've not done those things, because you do not want to instruct a vulnerable young person to make decisions that will destroy her life. No moral person would say, yeah, man, I dropped LSD and it was awesome. If you ever tried driving drunk, it's really fun. No one would say that. So in the realm of philosophical discourse, it's actually here that we can uncover these things that we can't say in real life. In the realm, the safe space of a university or this setting that is this podcast that we're on, or philosophical discourse, we can actually engage in things like, yeah, I did drop LSD that one time. Yeah, I made this terrible mistake and somehow got away with it. Or, yes, in the context of Plato's Republic, you need to lie. Politicians must lie. Lying is good. You can actually say it. Something you can't say. No president is going to come on television and announce that lying is good. But you can say that in the realm of a somewhat esoteric in the sense, or hermetic in the sense of closed off discourse, some safe space where we can actually pursue the truth at all costs. But again, Jordan doesn't want to do that because he might get, or he fears that he might get dropped by the Daily Wire if he's a little too honest.